Six minutes past 8 on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, and myself and Aisling are with you right through until 10 a.m. this morning. We are talking Champions League and delighted to be joined on the line this morning by the ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden. Morning, Mark. How are things?
Hi, Shane. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Good.
Thanks a lot for joining us. I know you were in Naples last night for Napoli's exit and AC Milan's progression to the Champions League semi-finals for the first time since 2007. Feisty atmosphere, I'd imagine, between these two. Mark, how was it on the night?
It was, yeah. And, I've started to do the tie thinking that Napoli would go through. I thought Napoli was a great story, but I just think over the two legs, and especially last night, they just looked like a team that just run out of steam. Especially Girouds, who's been brilliant this season. One of the players of the season, but he obviously missed his penalty last night, and you had the fact that he's now done 6 games without a goal or an assist, which he's not like in the season. I just think he kind of sums up what's happened to Napoli. They just had a really, really tough, hard season. They're going to win Serie A, but I just think they've hit the wall just when they needed to kind of push on in the Champions League.
Probably highlights how tough it is to compete on the two fronts. They of course have the Serie A title all but wrapped up, so it's one of those things, I guess, Mark, that you, as you mentioned, Kvaratskhelia, like, he has been brilliant all season, but these players are going to get tired as well, and Osimhen is another who has lit the place up, but it was tough for them last night.
It was, yeah. I mean, bear in mind, they were without Kimi was suspended, and Anguissa was suspended. They had, I think, a couple of players that injured in the first half last night. Osimhen was playing his first game in almost a month, and it just felt a bit of a patch-up job, and it certainly wasn't the Napoli that we saw at the start of the season. I mean, I remember the Liverpool game in Naples. They absolutely blew them away, and they just lacked that. I mean, they created plenty of chances, but they lacked that kind of zip, that burst of energy which they had. But, in fairness to Milan, it was like watching the old Milan. It was like watching, Baresi and Maldini at times, where they defended, where they were organised. It was a really kind of classic example of how to defend a lead away from home in the Champions League, and they did that, and it was a brilliant display by Milan, and they have to give them credit for that. And I think, obviously, people look forward to their semi-final, probably against Inter, which is, a massive game, but I do think that the winners will come from the other side of the draw, probably Real Madrid or Man City, to be fair.
Yeah, you would imagine it's kind of shaping up that way for sure. You described AC Milan's performance last night in your piece on ESPN as smart, and I think that was a perfect word to summarise it, because it was just game management at its best. Olivier Giroud, once again, Mark, stepping up with the goal.
He did, and missed the penalties as well, to be fair, missed a good chance, but Giroud just keeps on going, and he's a player that he does get better with age. I think the experience he's got and his wisdom, and I just think he is a perfect player for that. It's quite a young team in places, the Milan side, and I think he adds something. He's not. You look at the way he plays, and he's not the quickest, and he's not very mobile, but his goals record is outstanding. It really is. He's the top scorer all time for France, but then you look, but he's no Thierry Henry, but whatever it is about, he really scores goals, and he's there again last night in a big atmosphere. I think for me as well, I think that obviously Osimhen coming back was a big thing for Napoli, and Milan just, Pioli's tactics. He had Simon Kjaer and Fikayo Tomori marking Osimhen, and apart from that goal he scored, 3rd minute into stoppage time, he was really quiet. Bearing in mind he had been injured, but I just thought Milan did a really good job, and everyone talks about how great it is to watch people like Pep Guardiola, City team, and Liverpool, and the club, how exciting they are, but it is quite exciting at times to watch a team like Milan defend like they did last night, and it shows you that there is an art to defending, and it's often underpraised, I should say, that the fact that teams get defending done properly.
Yeah, Mark, I felt they were very defensively solid. That was probably one of the most impressive parts of their game. And I think going forward, like first semi-final since 2007, it's exciting times for Milan.
It is. Like I say, you look at the team, you look at where they're going in Serie A, thinking, the 4th or 20 odd points behind Naples. How can they be in the Champions League semi-final? But sometimes it's what big clubs do. Whether it's the badge or the strip, it motivates the players. I was in the San Siro last week. I just felt that Milan felt that they were on their own turf. It was like, right, with Champions League quarterfinal, this is our place. And Napoli were kind of feeling the way a little bit, despite the fact that Napoli are the better team. And I just think sometimes when you got a history of a club like Milan, you just feel comfortable in that scenario. And they just looked comfortable last night. And I mean, the point I made in the piece last night is that obviously everyone talks about the miracle of Istanbul in 2005 and what a great game it was for Liverpool. People don't often talk about what happened to Milan, and for them to go back to the final in Istanbul this year, 18 months later, some sort of redemption, that'd be a fairy tale for them. But they're a big club, Milan, and I suppose if ever they get in the semi-finals, if they get to the final, they won't be fazed by it.
for anyone who hasn't seen the highlights, I'd urge you to go back, especially and watch Rafael Leao's run for that Giroud goal. He's just takes off and turns on the turbos. It was brilliant. What's the atmosphere, Mark, around Naples when it comes to Victor Osimhen? Because there's all the talk that he might be heading off in the summer. Manchester United seem to be one of the clubs that are certainly being linked with his signature, and I guess that's a position in which they need to improve. But is the feeling that he will leave?
Well, I mean, I spoke to a couple of fans in the town yesterday, and the feeling on the fans that definitely not, he won't leave. Whether it's naivety or just being a bit blind to the truth, but I do think that, you know, you talk about 100 million euros at least as a starting point for Osimhen, so that's big money that Napoli probably can't turn down, even if you win Serie A and get back in the Champions League. And over the years, Napoli have moved players on, people like Cavani moved on, Lavezzi, so I think they probably would accept an offer for Osimhen, but, you know, they won't want to accept one for Kvaratskhelia as well, so it's a case of which one do they sell this summer. But obviously Bayern Munich need a striker, Man United need a striker, and they're both big clubs with big money. So, I mean, last night he was poor last night, but he's been out for a month, so you can't really judge him on that. But I do think that, you know, you look around the strikers that might be available this summer, you're probably looking at Osimhen and maybe Harry Kane, and beyond that, you know, maybe Vlahovic at Juventus, but I think Osimhen and Kane are obviously the big two. So I'd be very surprised if he stays at Napoli, because you have some very big and ambitious clubs chasing his signature.
Yeah, and only back from injury as well. Where do you rate him in terms of the type of centre forward he is? I read reports that he's one of the strongest centre forwards in Europe, maybe behind Haaland at the minute. Would you agree with that, Mark, or where would you rate him?
I still put him behind Harry Kane. I mean, obviously Haaland's at the top, but I still put him behind Kane, and, you know, people like Marcelo Storts have goals. I think with Osimhen, he's got great pace. He's got strength, but I think that there will be a question mark over him, rightly or wrongly, because he's doing Serie A, and I think, you know, it hasn't been the best league over the years for producing strikers. We all saw, you know, Romelu Lukaku, you know, destroyed Serie A a couple of years ago. You know, either side have not been great at Man United and Chelsea, so I do think Osimhen's got the credentials and the quality to do better than that, but it is a question mark. He'll have to answer that. So can he do it in the Premier League where it is so intense? But Haaland's done it. Kane does it regularly, so I don't think he'll have a major problem. But I think it is something that, at the moment, means he's not quite at the level of Haaland and Kane. You know, Lewandowski, great striker over the years. I think I think time's catching up with him now. But I do think that those are the top two in terms of Haaland and Kane, with Osimhen behind those two.
The other game last night, of course, Mark, and we touched on it heavily at the top of the show this morning, was Chelsea's exit at the hands of Real Madrid, 4-0 in aggregate. And look, it's been a rude awakening to life as caretaker manager for Frank Lampard. 4 games now, 4 defeats. Only 1 goal scored in those 4 games as well. Were you surprised that Frank Lampard was the man that Todd Bowley and co went for between now and the end of the season?
Well, in the real world, I was very surprised. In the Todd Bowley world, I wasn't surprised at anything, because you just don't know what is coming down the track at Chelsea at the moment, because they've made some strange decisions all season. You know, from sacking Thomas Tuchel, appointing Graham Potter. It's just been a long case of, you know, decisions made without the experience that you need to make them, or the knowledge maybe. So, you know, the idea of bringing Lampard into, it's the old classic steady the ship because he knows the club kind of thing. And you know, his last 12 games with Everton, last 9, he was sacked at Chelsea 2 years ago. Frank Lampard has no credentials to manage Chelsea apart from the fact he used to play for them. So it was a bad move, and, you know, it's almost like tarnishing Lampard's legacy, because it's 4 straight defeats now, like you say. I don't know who the next game is again. I think it might be Brentford next week, which they could lose as well. So, you know, what they need right now is a win, just a win of any kind, whether it's in the Champions League or anything. So they're in an absolute mess. They're not going to be in any kind of European football next season. They've got lots of players to move on. I think Lampard will be well out of it in the summer when he finishes his caretaker stint. But I just wouldn't trust Todd Bowley and his advisors to get the right manager in the summer to make them what they need to be, which is, you know, one of the Premier League's top 4 clubs and a club in the Champions League.
I know you've been writing earlier this month about the names, as many as 7 names on Chelsea's shortlist. They included Nagelsmann, Enrique, you have Maurizio Pochettino, of course, in there as well, Ancelotti, and the sporting manager Ruben Amorim being mentioned as well. Is it still a lucrative job? Because, of course, they won't have Champions League football next season, and yet it's still a massive club, and it's in London.
Yeah, it's a top job, Chelsea, for all those reasons you say. And, you know, they're at the Champions League, but they'll aspire to be in the Champions League. And a manager that's a good coach could look at that squad and think there's some really good players here. You just need to get them working as a unit, which might be easier said than done, because they've been put together almost like they've been thrown at a dartboard. But it's a great job, Chelsea, because it's probably London's biggest club in the eyes of European coaches. I mean, I know Arsenal and Tottenham have got the history, but I think Chelsea because of where it is and because of what it's done over the last 20 years. They are a super club, Chelsea. So it's a job that out-of-work coaches will be falling over themselves to get. So I don't think they'll have any concerns on that point. But, as you saw with Man United over the years since Ferguson retired, if you make one bad mistake, it leads to another and another. And before you know it, 10 years is gone and you've basically fallen way behind your rivals. So that would be my concern if I was a Chelsea fan, because Todd Bowling does kind of have similarities to Ed Woodward in terms of making emotional decisions that, like I said, don't really have any kind of basis in reality. So it's an interesting one to watch, Chelsea. And can I just go back very quickly on the Osimhen thing? I didn't mention Karim Benzema as one of the best strikers, I think, before people say Karim Benzema. I've got to mention Karim Benzema.
Yeah, unbelievable. He is, absolutely. But even just when we were talking about Frank Lampard there, Mark, I often wonder, will this do more damage than good for his managerial career or whatever he goes on to do after this? It's not a good look, and obviously money talks. He obviously will be well paid for this, but really in terms of his management career, you can't see it being a positive experience. No,
it doesn't do any good, really. I mean, let's be honest, it was, his reputation was pretty low after Everton because it went really bad at Everton. And, on a personal level, Frank Lampard is one of the good guys. He's a guy that will engage with the fans, with the media. He's not one of these that will kind of be abrupt or aloof, but you've got to say that Everton went so badly wrong, but he was very lucky to get the Chelsea job, and he's not actually doing anything at Chelsea to suggest that what happened at Everton was a blip. So I don't know where Lampard goes from here. I really don't. I think it's going to be tough for him because he's already had his dream job with Chelsea. So, after failing at Everton, what is he going to get? He's probably not going to get a Premier League job. He ain't going to get the England job, which, I think that's a good thing or a bad thing for him. And I don't know, I just think he'll end up being a TV pundit because I just don't see where he goes in management. I just think he's got too much failure on his CV at a young age. He's not really achieved anything, let's be honest. I mean, he didn't even get Derby promoted, so nice guy, good guy, but I just think management isn't for him.
We've got a comment in on our YouTube channel from David. Says, can anyone name a club where the owner has publicly involved themselves directly in team performance and it's gone well? What did you make of the dressing room decision by Todd Bowley to go in and speak to the players? I mean, some of the reports were saying he was in there for an hour and pointing out certain players' performances, using words like embarrassing. Is this a very bad look for Todd Bowley and Chelsea?
Well, it's a bad look when they're losing. I mean, I think Lampard made a really good point in his press conference of the day when he was asked about that, and he said, look, Roman Abramovich used to come in all the time, and that, when he was there, and he was there for 20 years, and under Abramovich, Chelsea were pretty successful. So, I think Abramovich knew that there's probably a time and a place to go in, and if he wanted to, let off some steam and criticise players, he would do it, but he would do it when Abramovich did it, he knew that he meant it. With Todd Bowley, he's coming in, he's probably thinking that, now, who is this guy? I mean, who is he? What has he done to come in and, tell us that we're doing things wrong? Because, yes, he's the co-owner, yes, he's a billionaire, but his background is baseball, and it's a different sport, and I think the problem is he's come into football thinking that he can apply the methods that he's used in baseball and US sport in football, and it's a totally different environment. And I think when you come into that dressing room and you start having a go at players, if you had any respect in the first place, you lose it because you're not doing it from a position of strength or credentials. I'd imagine when Abramovich came into the dressing room that the players were, sat up straight and listening because whatever his faults the guy had, delivered success at Chelsea, and the players knew that his methods was working. With Todd Bowley, none of his methods have worked. So I suppose the players are thinking, well, you can't have a go at us for making mistakes because you're making them every day.
Can I just finally ask you, Mark, before we let you go, I know you've been writing about the so-called prospective sale of Manchester United. Joel and Avram Glazer increasingly confident of securing this outside investment. Not the news Manchester United fans want to hear, because that would mean that they could stay on as United owners and potentially look to double the value of the club, as they say, over the next decade. I know there's a deadline of April 28th for third bids. The word greed is coming to mind here, and I'm sure a lot of United fans will use that one. Is it feeling like it's heading this direction, that the Glazers might stay put?
Yeah, I mean, I did a piece in February when I wrote that people were contacting the Rain Group, a bank that are in charge of it, and they're telling me that they're kind of sceptical of the Glazers' motives, that they didn't really think they would sell. And honestly, I got heaps of reviews on social media from fans about that, but it's not because I wanted it to happen, it's because that's what I was told. So sometimes you have to accept that there can be an uncomfortable truth if you don't like it, and that is the situation with the Glazers right now, that even if you just, take away your emotional attachment to it, and you look at the fact that I think now four hedge funds and investment banks have made public their desire to get involved, but it's not to buy the club, it's to help invest and to help support the owners, which is basically enabling the Glazers to stay. So there are 6 Glazers, we know, and 4 of them have, certainly 3 have had no kind of involvement on a day-to-day basis. What the other one, Brian, has kind of removed himself over the years from United. So it's just Avi and Joel, and I'm told that Joel and Avi are just very keen to find a way to keep the club and to run it themselves rather than run it with the voice of 4 siblings that maybe have different ideas. Now, if Avi and Joel think they can, get rid of their siblings and make a success of it, well and good, but they've had 18 years of trying, and it hasn't really looked very good, certainly the last 10 years, So I think the fans may have to brace themselves for the fact that the Glazers might stay. And I think one thing that struck me yesterday when Man City announced their plans to extend the Etihad to 60,000 seats, and they had these artist impressions of what it looked like with this great, arena next to it and everything. It looked amazing. The City over the years, Abu Dhabi have invested so much at that stadium that it is now to the point where it's going to host games at Euro 2028, and Old Trafford isn't. Old Trafford is it's a relic of the past, and that's because the Glazers haven't spent any money on it. And it's similar with the team, where they have invested in the team, but a bit like Todd Bowley at Chelsea, he's made some bad decisions with coaches, with players, with contracts. So I don't think that they can, Joel and Avi can say, look, give us a chance because we know what we're doing. It's our siblings that didn't know what they were doing. I just think they had too long with it. But unfortunately, I just don't see a way that they will offload the club if they're getting offers of investment from American investment banks, because the idea of doubling the growth of the club over the years is just one of those things where, we've seen Super League come and go. We've seen the Premier League, the kind of operation, whatever it was. All these things, these big ideas, but at some point, one of these big ideas will come off because the big clubs with the big money are going to say, look, this needs to work for us. And one thing I've been told about streaming, that eventually streaming rights will enable the likes of Man United and Liverpool to make an absolute killing on, overseas rights. So, and potentially, the FIFA Club World Cup is down the line as well. That might be more lucrative. So there are ways down the line where you can see Man United's growth and a lot of big clubs' growth, growing, doubling maybe, and that's what they want. But it's like chasing the rainbow, isn't it, with the Glazers? It's like, how long do they want? It's nearly 20 years now, and the debt is approaching £1 billion.
Yeah, saga rumbles on. Real Succession vibes off it as the Glazer siblings try and decide who's going to do what. Mark, great stuff as always. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Brilliant. Mark Ogden there, senior writer with ESPN.